Okay, we can start. Other people can just join as they come along. So again, my name is Michael Thero. I am the Health Director with the City of Greenfield. So this will be our PIP meeting regarding the draft for the public involvement plan. I'm going to try to keep this meeting to about 90 minutes at the most, just as that will be a pretty long meeting. We're going to have Lyons Witten go through the plan, and then we will try to take some questions at the end. If we do get close to that 90-minute mark towards the end, I would like to get through the plan just to make sure that we all get through that. And then I know Susan can help probably get some contacts out. If people have questions, they can always email us. It will probably be more efficient if we actually do some of the questions through emails. But if some people have some short questions, we'll try to keep them to like 3 minutes. We can try to take some questions at the end, but let's try to get through the plan first. And then at the end, Lions also has some of the new testing. So if we get to that, we can also go through that. So if you would like to start, Lions.
Great. Good evening, everyone. My name is Lyons Witten. I work for the engineering firm OHI Engineering on behalf of the City of Greenfield. We put together the draft PIP plan for the Lunt Neighborhood Action Group over the last 9 to 12 months. And it was finalized several weeks ago and submitted to Mass DEP, and a copy was placed in the library for public review. As with everything submitted to Mass DEP, it was also available for review at the Mass DEP's website. The plan outlines the players involved, who's doing what, what's the City of Greenfield's role, who is 401 Liberty, who is O'Reilly, Talbot, and Oaken, who is OHI Engineering, and what are each of those entities doing, and what are their responsibilities. The plan provides a fair amount of background on the work that's been done to date. There's 14 years worth of assessment and remediation and further assessment, further remediation, and quite a bit of redevelopment at the site, which drove much of the assessment and remediation that's happened. So there's a Reader's Digest version of much of that included in the PIP plan, so that folks who want to get up to speed don't have to read 14 years worth of substantial submittals to Mass DEP, and there's 50 or 60 submittals that one could download and review. Quite an undertaking. So anyway, there's been quite a bit of work that's happened at the site. There've been a lot of changes at the site. And so there's a review of that in here. The plan seeks to establish the City of Greenfield as the entity that will hold these meetings to inform the public as to what developments have occurred since the last time we sat and met, and give a forum for public input to the assessment and remediation process at the Lunt site. There was a prior PIP plan that OTO put together in 2022. And it was felt that the public didn't feel like they were getting adequate opportunity to provide input. So this plan seeks to change that and put in place a more regular schedule of meetings so that folks can feel informed and provide input. There's some discussion of the character and of the contaminants and the site and the surrounding neighborhood. If folks are interested, there's a more detailed history of the actions that have been taken over the last 14 years in one of the appendices. But mostly this seeks to lay out a series of discussions such as we're having tonight so that people can feel informed. There's one aspect of it that I think is still up in the air, and that is that the library being a public repository. The PIP plan, this draft plan, was presented to the library, and we asked that they establish a repository as we're supposed to do under the cleanup regulations. And the library basically says we don't have room for many voluminous reports. But OTO did set up a website, and it's on a link on our website, and that's still on our library website. And so we looked at that, and it is indeed a link to Mass DEP's library of everything that's been submitted. And so while the regulations indicate that there should be a public repository, the changes since the regulations were written of having a full and complete electronic library at Mass DEP available to anyone on the web seems to have allowed that perhaps everything going to the library is not practical, at least from the library's point of view. So I view that as an ongoing discussion. We're supposed to have a public repository, and it certainly seems that the Mass DEP searchable sites website is available to anyone, anywhere, anytime. So that would seem to fit that part of the regulations. So open discussion. There is an intent on behalf of the city to hold a regular series of meetings, and this being one of them. So I think that I would like to address specific questions about the draft, if folks have those, and proceed in that way.
We have some in the chat. So one question,
Go ahead.
can you hear me, Wayne? All right, so any discussion of an alternate repository other than the library or the DEP site, I guess?
Not yet, but like I said, I view that as a open question, whether it's necessary, and if so, where could it be?
Can you hang on a sec? I gotta get my food out. That's on the.
Matt, you got a question?
Well, my only question would be, and I have not tried to go onto the DEP website. I just don't know how navigable it is to anybody who is not really savvy, sort of tech savvy, who would be me. I think it's great that it is available to the public. I'm just, my question would be, what is your feeling about its navigability? So to get on to the DEP and then find the Lunt site, is it something that's?
I think that part is relatively simple.
Okay.
And the copy of the draft PIP plan that's in the library, the hard copy that's in the library,
yeah.
Inside the front cover has instructions on how to do that.
Nice.
And we can certainly send instructions to anybody who would like them. That part's easy. The challenging part comes when there's a new report and you go to, you want to review it. If you're not familiar with the format of how these are done, if you don't have a particularly large screen or two screens where you can put the map on one screen and the data on another screen so that you can evaluate them, that's when it starts to get challenging, when you have to look at everything on one screen and it's not very big.
Right.
Some of the maps are quite sizable, and you really have to zoom into them to be able to see detail.
Right. Good. Well, thanks, Whitman. Outlines.
I'll go Dan and then Glenn. So Dan.
Actually, I would ask that you do Glenn first, and he may be covering my question. So.
All right, you can go ahead, Glenn.
Thanks, Dan. I just want to, for folks who don't know, I want to introduce Dan. Dan Felton is the new LSP for the Lunt Neighborhood Action Group under the DEP Technical Assistance Grant funding. Dan's been on board for a couple of weeks. We're trying to bring him up to speed on things. He's pretty savvy, so I think he's up to speed. But one of the things that I'm interested in is the city used to have some information about the Lunt site on a web page under the planning department. And as I recall, that was last updated in, well, I don't know when it was posted, but the information was from 2015. And that was the tie and bond study that was done, which was a very preliminary study, 5 years before the comprehensive site assessment was completed or submitted. So I don't know if the city, I haven't looked actually today to see if the city has gotten rid of that old tie and bond study that was paid for out of FERCog funding, or if that's still there. But I think that could be a location where the city could update that information to make it more available, it would seem to be a logical place for new information to be posted, especially some of the key information, key documents that we are going to be developing as we go forward. I don't know about a repository for the 100+ documents that already exist. Like Matt said, you really need to know your jargon in order to wade through that morass. It's all there, and some of them are hundreds of pages long, and I don't expect people to really understand or read that. It's not that user friendly. Like you can't view it without downloading it, for instance. So I think that going forward, maybe we should consider a place where the city can provide the new information to keep people updated. And that would be a pretty limited amount of information, I believe. And if some of the documents are too big, then they could just have the links to the specific location on the DEP repository for that document with a better name for it and a description, a short description. It wouldn't be that much effort to do that. And it would be very helpful to the public to help them understand and be involved in this process. So that's my first comment. Maybe we can compromise on not replicating what DEP does, but supplementing it or augmenting it, making it more user-friendly. The second thing that I want to bring up, and I'm sure Dan was going to mention this, is that as the PIP group, as the Lunt Neighborhood Action Group, we really feel strongly that we need to come up with a schedule of meetings going forward, a regularly occurring schedule of meetings starting in January, where we would be meeting at least once a month. Because my feeling about this is that we have not had very many meetings or frequent meetings related to this since the PIP group was created, just because there's no commitment. There has been little commitment to doing that. And I think by setting a schedule of monthly meetings, that would signify that there is a commitment to go through this process of public involvement and input. And we have a lot of big decisions that need to be made in the very near future and then going forward. So that's something that I would like to see come out of this discussion tonight, is that schedule of regularly occurring meetings, monthly meetings. After a few months, if we get to a point where that doesn't seem necessary, then we can reduce that. But to start with, I want the commitment that we're going to be dealing with this, paying attention to it, because if we don't have that commitment, it's easy to forget. It's easy to be overwhelmed by all the other things that we have to do. And there are many things to keep the city operating, and this just hasn't been a priority. So I'm not trying to be critical. I'm just, I think, stating the facts that we've been in this process now for a couple of years, and we need to actually begin to implement that public involvement process the way it is really intended to be done. And I think I'll leave the rest for Dan to mention. The last thing I will say is that in one of the recent orders that DEP issued subsequent to the audit that was done about 2 years ago, one of those orders actually specified that the city had to provide a PIP schedule, a PIP meeting schedule. And I think that we need to comply with that order by DEP to come up with that schedule. We can certainly talk about it and agree on when those things are convenient to be done by everybody, because I know there are a lot of existing meetings, but let's work on that together to make that a commitment. And I'll turn it over to Dan. Thank you.
Len, I was thinking that we would let the other, anybody else who has something to add, and then if there's anything left, I'll be sure to cover it.
You want to go, Susan?
Sure. I was in talking about this kind of idea of monthly meetings. One of the things that occurs to me is that you know, we're going into the time when the environmental bond bill is going to be put through to the state. I've had some conversations with Elena Cohen from Joe Comerford's office. And one of the things that would be really helpful is if the three LSPs, Lori McCarthy, Lyons Witten, and Dan Felton, could get together and begin to kind of scope out what is it going to take from your perspective, from the information you have, to clean this up or to do whatever needs to be done. It may be that cleanup is not the way to go. It may mean that there is some other actions that we need to take, but to get that kind of begin to get that process discussed, and then in February and in January begin discussing what that looks like with us, and then in February we have the phase 2 report, which then should give us a way to refine that and get it together, so then we can actually talk with the state about what needs to be done and get it into the bond bill, or at least make sure that there is money in the brownfields fund or whatever other fund there is to make it to make sure that it's available for us. So that's my comment.
I agree, Susan. Aaron?
Yeah, actually, Susan touched on most of the things that I was going to say, but I also wanted to make it clear that we are committed to it. I know I've had a couple meetings with Susan since I started this job, asking her to basically tell me everything she knows. I have read everything I can about this. I think it might be smart as well to, for the meeting in February, Chaluska, por favor. Thank you. To try and coordinate with at least our state delegation, or the next meeting after February, whatever. So I just wanted to make it clear that this is on our radar. We want to make sure that they are involved as well, especially when we're talking about the environmental bond bill, because they are such fierce advocates for us. And I apologize, I am at home for all the noise in the background. But yeah, so I do want to make sure that I agree with Glenn that we do need to have regularly scheduled meetings, but at the same time, I think we are going to have to work closely with our state delegates too to make sure that they are available for some meeting time. So I don't want to put anything into stone tonight. If you guys could give us a couple weeks to really work that out, I would appreciate it. I'm sure everybody else would as well, especially as we're looking at that environmental bond bill coming forward.
Okay. I had one question in the chat too. It was just, Lyons, do you think maybe just a brief summary of like the major changes that were made to the PIP? They're just wondering if we could summarize some of the changes that for the updated one compared to the older one. Are there any?
I think the big change is simply that the city is taking charge of holding the meetings and making the PIP happen. That had been done in the past by 401 Liberty, and the city would like things to be more regular, and that's really how this all came about. So that is the big change.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yep.
Dan?
Yeah, just one of the things that we had talked about prior to the meeting was, I think the way the plan sits right now is there's a 20-day comment period before submittals are made to the DEP. Major milestone submittals, like the phase 2, for example, that's coming up. And we're wondering whether or not it would be possible to work into that, perhaps with an additional week to 10 days or an additional 20 days, whatever it needs, but to allow there to be a public meeting like this to discuss the results before the reports go in. And maybe that can be also taken care of immediately after the reports go in. But I think it would be important to not just have the public comment period, not have some sort of a capstone to it, which would be the public meeting.
Okay, I agree with that. In our chat was kind of the same question. They were kind of asking how much we should meet and when we should meet, depending on what kind of information we gather or that we have coming in. But I agree in that we should meet when we do get the reports probably and not just do just a public comment period, just so we have some information at hand. Do we have any other questions?
I do have a clarification for Glenn. You had talked about wanting the city's website to be updated. I know that the PIP plan, the draft that we're talking about, was put on the city's website as well as the hard copy in the library, and it being submitted to DEP. So that is available on the city's website.
Okay.
Hey, that's
another
great.
question?
I like I said, I didn't look at the website today.
Yeah,
no, I just while we're all here, I have I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but I know Lines and Dan now, and I know Lori is on the call, and so we have 3 LSPs here who are competent and very experienced. And I'm just wondering if we can prevail upon the 3 of you to work together to prepare this preliminary estimate that our legislative delegation needs in order to request the funding through the environmental bond bill. And that would make us all feel, so much better that we had 3 people who, everyone has their own angle to this, their own interest, but the view together, I think, could really do a great job of putting that estimate together, and then it would benefit the city, it would benefit the neighborhood, it would certainly benefit the tenant to be able to secure that funding. And that is a very high priority for us at this time. So, without putting you on the spot too much, I just want to ask that be something that the 3 of you work on together, however that can happen. And I think it would be a good investment on the part of the city, the Lunt neighborhood, and the tenant to make sure that kind of cooperation and joint effort be done so that we can get that solid estimate put together to provide to our congressional legislative delegation. Thanks.
Don't see any. You want to go, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, I'll speak to that. I think, as Glenn's bringing it up, we had talked about this. I think it would be a great idea. It's something that we definitely can do, at least based on the information that's been collected so far. So, I just to say that I'm committed to working on that and hope that we can work together, because we have a pretty august group of people here that I've known or known about for a long time. I just wanted to go back to the repository for documentation, and I agree with everything that's been said. And we don't need to have all of the documents, but I do think that there are people that are going to have difficulty accessing documents if they want to look at them. And I would hope that we can come up with at least a compromise of reports, key milestone reports. I think every status report, all of that, doesn't need, there's a lot of the documents that have been submitted are the environmental notice of sampling, et cetera, et cetera. But the key documents, the phase 1, the phase 2, and phase 3, phase 4, as those come out, IRA plans, RAM plans, I think it would be worth, even if they didn't have all the analytical data, which is usually 3/4 of the report, is sort of all that backup material. If we had text tables and figures available, it would take a lot less room, and it would be very accessible, because without 2 screens, I'd be unable to do the work that I do, because it's constant looking back and forth and referencing sometimes multiple documents, because a current document doesn't necessarily have the same information or plans that the phase 2 might have had, or the phase 1. So I think it would be helpful to have at least those major documents, text tables and figures, somewhere. Whether it's, literally, I think it's one small bookshelf could pick up text tables and figures without all the analytical data. But just a suggestion.
Okay, I'm sure we can look at finding a place to possibly work that out, and work with Lions to see which relevant documents we want to put up.
We can certainly do that, and I'm happy to get together with other LSPs and see if we can come up with a reasonable path forward that seems like the right thing to do, given the site. So I'm happy to do that.
Okay. I had another question in the chat. When does the public comment period on the draft plan close? Do you know when that's going to be, Lions?
It's 20 days.
20 days. And we started.
It's 20 days from today, which is
today.
basically the end of the year.
Okay.
And then there's a holiday, so you got an extra weekend, and
Okay.
Well, we'll look at it in early January and wrap it up.
Mayor, do you have anything you would like to add?
No, I don't really. I will just say that some questions came through today that I'm not ready to answer. I was just looking at them actually tonight for the very first time about 2 minutes ago. So
Okay, I did say in the beginning of the meeting, Susan, and our information is available online too. So if people wanted to submit some questions and that we could answer, that would be a good way to get them out to us as well. Can obviously answer it a little more detailed through email. I think nobody else has any other questions. You can definitely contact us, Susan.
Yeah, I just wanted to let you know that I promised everyone that is on the PIP list that I would send out the video of this meeting. So I will do that tomorrow. And so that if anyone has any questions, they will have that information either through you or through me to get the information out. And I will make sure that we have that communication.
Okay, great. That sounds great. And yeah, it's a lot of information. I know people got to go through it. So that's why we'll be open for any kind of questions or any concerns after the meeting's over. So yeah.
I just have a quick question before we close out. I'm sorry, I'm having some trouble with I'm on a phone and I'm just having some trouble making it work for me. This is Dodie. I'm in a butter. I've met quite a few of you. I'm just wondering, and I brought this up earlier in a smaller group, but I'm just wondering if when we think about the extent that will take into consideration some of the concerns about the storm sewer, the storm sewer, and also certain areas that haven't been looked at, like the north side of the property, and that those kinds of things will be in the what you consider when you submit that estimate, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, I believe those will be in consideration as well, Lions. I believe did they start going over that direction? I wasn't sure.
Some of that work has happened, yes.
Okay, that's what I thought. Some of it is happening, it's
Uh,
ongoing now.
Results, there've been some monitoring wells on the north side that are much cleaner than the center of the site. So
Okay,
there are other areas that still have open questions. And just so folks who are here know, and people who see this later, all of the questions that I've been able to write down this evening and all of the written submitted questions will be compiled in an appendix of the final document and answered there. So the questions and the answers will be provided in the final document.
okay, great. That's good to know. All right. Do we have any more questions from anybody? No. Okay. All right. Dan?
Yeah, just one more question for
Yep.
Lions. So Lions, going forward with, so for each of the future meetings and question and answers, where will those be like appended to the plan or part of, where will those live? I guess is what I'm curious.
That's a good question. I would think they would live with their associated document.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, I suppose there could be an amendment. There could be a separate.
Yeah. I mean, maybe something, something that we had talked about as well, and it sort of goes back to, maybe the city website, but would be sort of a website dedicated to this process, the PIP process, where questions and answers could be posted, and meetings, recordings and transcripts could end up. I mean, if everything is going to end up being posted, it would all be great if it was all in one spot. But if that's not happening, maybe we can create a spot for it. So
Yeah, we could certainly look into that. I'm sure we could kind of create at least a page, even if it's an added page onto the health site or onto just the town site in general. Maybe we can get something set up to put the links and then any questions or related answers.
that'd be awesome. Thank you.
Good idea.
All right. I don't see any more questions. Do you have anything you want to add, Lions?
I do not.
All right. All right. Well, I appreciate everybody coming. Thank you for all joining. Hopefully we can keep this process regular and keep these things moving forward and all work together and, find a solution to this issue. Again, I appreciate you all for coming tonight. Thank you for spending your time. And with that, and like I said, if you have any questions, please reach out to us and we will try to get back to you with some answers as soon as possible. All right. Thank you. Everybody have a good night.